So this is a shot of a mother buffalo and the calf up in Isan in Ubon Ratchathani.
So that's in Thailand.
Yes, in Thailand. And the reason I like it is that the buffaloes like water, and she and the calf are in water. And then when I approach, she comes up. She's protecting the calf, and it's a nice photo of the cow and the calf. But then in the background you have the farmer, and so for me it's the connection between the farmer and the cow and the cow and the calf, and looking there. So it sort of brings out those that linkage with the rural.
Okay, we're back in action. COVID Wave 45, Roman Anton Podcast, Bangkok, Thailand. We have Chris King with us today. Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
How are you?
Very good, thanks.
Good.
Yeah, good to be here, finally.
Yeah, I've been chasing you down, as with many guests, so I apologize. A little embarrassing, but I wanted to talk to you for a long time because of the not competing stories, not parallel stories, but the brief conversations that we've had have gone in directions that I've wanted to continue talking about. Mm-hmm. And I thought we should do this as a podcast. Right. So met you as a photographer first, videographer second, maybe at the same meeting. But you handed me a card and it said Evolve on it, on one side.
Yes.
And I said, what's this? And you said, while you're filming, it's about sustainability. And I thought, oh, okay, here we go. So I thought maybe we could talk a little bit about Evolve and about sustainability today, about you.
Yes.
But I wanted the audience to hear, we're in Bangkok, Thailand. The folks that I meet, the folks that you meet, multifaceted to say the least, but interesting. And so hopefully we could cover a couple of topics. And on the Roman Anton podcast, we talk for a while. Then we do a performance piece. And in your instance, we'll talk about some of your photography. So from Evolve to photography, and then we're going to go across the street to see the new Benjakitti Park, which is pretty exceptional. I snuck in and took a peek, and maybe you'll see some footage you can shoot down there. But I see quite a few people taking pictures of the flora and fauna of that park now, which is pretty extreme since it's right in the middle of the...
Great that Bangkok has set aside that location for such a big park.
Right. It's out of the ordinary. So, Chris King, right? That's your stage name and your actual name.
That's right. Yes.
You have a funny accent. So, Australian?
Yes. Yeah, okay. Originally from Australia, born in Sydney originally, and then later on moved to the country.
And so, Sydney to me is in the south of the country. Is that correct?
Yes, it's on the east coast, a little south of the Central.
Okay. Little south of Central. So to you, not really south. So is Melbourne?
Melbourne is south.
Yeah, yes. Yeah. Okay.
Tasmania is south.
So, okay. And it's so bad. I mean, I think I represent typical American view. Is Tasmania approaching the Arctic? Is it cold as a country? Does it get down there?
It gets very cold in the wintertime. And during summer, it's very pleasant. It's very nice. The waters around it are cool, but yes, you're on the way to the Arctic.
Okay.
So that's a distinctive feature of Australia because it's 5,000 kilometres across. It's about the same size as the United States minus Alaska. So you have everything from the tropical jungles up the north and very similar climate here to Bangkok to very European style. If you go to Melbourne, it's quite a European city, really.
And so, help me with this a little bit. So you said born in Sydney. Sydney Harbor, we all know that. Tom Cruise, Mission Impossible, or things of that nature. But When I look at that water, and I looked at this specifically with a friend of mine, John White, when he was looking at getting a property on the water. Blue water, it looked warm. It looked like very warm water. It looked like you could swim in it year-round with that type of color. Is there a cold winter? So that'd be in summer for us?
Yes. Now, in Sydney, parts of Sydney could get down close to zero, or even in the western suburbs, zero. But the days will warm up, to 18, 22 degrees. So Sydney is quite an outdoor place. So people get very involved with outdoor activities. So golf, tennis, swimming, sailing, picnics. And yes, a lot revolves around the harbour or the beaches. So it's a bit cool for most people to swim in the middle of winter, but with a wetsuit, people will surf and so on there.
So were you a water kid growing up?
Yes, definitely. I love the surf. I'm of an age where didn't get into riding surfboards as such, but body surfing.
Sure.
So if you say what being here in Thailand, what do I miss most about Australia? It would be the surf, the waves. So they have beautiful beaches here, but it's not quite as invigorating. The nice thing about Australia is it's blessed with good beaches and good surf, so that you can go in and spend an hour body surfing and just come back really refreshed. And of course, if you're lucky enough to be able to surf, Australia's produced its share of world champions on the surfing side, but it's great for that. And then sailing, obviously, is another one utilising the water.
Yeah, I had that the sailing tournament out of New York that the Americans won America's Cup for 8 million years, and then the Kiwis came in and beaten Alinghi or something like that. But I think we learned the hard way, sort of the expertise and seafaringness of the cultures down there through that experience. But it really... you're right.
You even put a Aussie captain on the US boat.
Right. To add further. But so to get back where I was going to go with that was your body surfing, wearing your jean cutoff shorts and running in barefoot, or was it rocky bottom and wetsuit back in whatever contrivance?
No. You have the beaches have got very good sand. Very few problems with rocks and things like that there. So the main thing that you have to watch out for is rips.
Yeah.
So you have to just be aware of the water. Australia's famous for the surf lifesavers, and for a reason. A lot of tourists arrive. Yes, want to go to Bondi Beach, to Manly Beach, get out there, and then all of a sudden they're being towed out.
Yeah.
And they're not quite sure what to do. So it's being water wise, and then also confident. If you're dumped by a wave, how to handle it. And so generally in Australia, you grow up very comfortable with the water, and then when I moved to the country, for example, onto a farm when I was 9, the school that I went to, I went from a big school in Sydney to a little school. Only 70 pupils for kindergarten through to year 6, 2 teachers handling.
So that's 10 in a class, roughly.
No. There was just 2 classes, and the teacher had to. One teacher had to handle kindergarten, 1st and 2nd class, and the other room had 3rd, 4th, 5th, and 6th class.
Chris, you're a little behind here. Would you catch up when you're in 3rd grade? Like, what are you talking about?
No,
teacher?
but this was the amazing thing. We have incredible teachers because they were able to handle not only 3 classes at once doing different things, but also at the school we had a family that was mentally retarded as well. So there was 3 children. So they were able to actually cope with the needs of varying needs. So I was quite a good student. They were able to cope with me and at the same time deal with the challenges of 3 mentally retarded people. And they did a great job. But what I was saying about swimming, even a little school like that, we built our own swimming pool. Everyone, it's compulsory to learn how to swim. So water is a big part.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I've been to Sydney, and I can't imagine it not being all of the lore, being there. It just is.
It's a beautiful city. I think, when I go globally, I sort of put Sydney, Hong Kong, San Francisco, and Rio de Janeiro in the same category as far as spectacular harbour cities. And I also lived 3 years in Rio. So between Sydney and Rio, it's a hard one to choose. I think in the end, probably Sydney wins because it's just got a great natural. There's trees around the harbour as well as the city scape there. But Rio certainly is very spectacular as well.
Yeah, I mean, of the four, all are fairly expensive. I guess Rio would be the cheapest to go live, but it's interesting because they're all vista cities, view cities. Nothing landlocked. You didn't pick Denver, or, But I remember going to Fremantle, Perth area, and getting in the water there and getting in all sorts of trouble. Just thinking I knew it was what, but the ocean's the ocean, right? Has a separate mind to it. So if you finished the sentence in Sydney with one of your mates and said, you'll get dragged all the way to in that rip, what would be the ridiculous exaggeration that you guys would use? Because if we were in California, we'd say, it'll take you to Chile or something.
Drag you to New Zealand.
Right,
Yes.
okay, so you watch out, that'll drag you to New Zealand, not Tasmania. So New Zealand was the big mess up. If you got dragged out that way,
That's
you're
right.
lost.
Yes, you're in real trouble.
Well, that's good stuff. So, I mean, I'm trying to comprehend the dexterity of a teacher, and I'm sure it was, no worries, mates, having a handful of children ages, 3rd grade to 7th grade, which in my mind would be trouble to trouble, right? Like 8 to 13 or 12, right? Just a handful. Were you a good kid? I mean, did your parents instill some, Chris, go to school and learn, or were you throwing stuff around the classroom?
Yes, no. I think I was a fairly easy child. I would still like to mark up a bit there. But you
were a city kid, right? I mean, that's maybe the point I'm making is you went out there, you were a bunch of room with a bunch of country kids, and you're like, all right, here's new boss in town.
Yes, that's yes, it's a big change because you come from Sydney, where you've got a big school. The grandparents were close, so you could just walk and go and see them. But you had things like billy carts and things, and to do. Australia's very sport orientated, so I was involved with sport there. And then coming to the rural areas in Australia, obviously there's not the people there, but they have amazing facilities for so few people. Say, for example, the town of this area that I was living was only 700 people, but in that town, other than police and
fire
and things, and a shopping centre, they have golf course, they have
public
football fields, public shooting range, they have swimming pool, community centre, squash courts, tennis courts, a whole range of things. So I think one good lesson going out of a big area is you need people to work together, and there's a much less selfish attitude about people. So you need a pool for the thing. So all the farmers come in and with the tractors dig the place.
Build
the head teacher there, built the bricks, and everyone comes in and makes it and paints it and things like that, and you end up with a pool with a school of only 70 people.
I mean, what more could you ask for? Cooperative community. I'm not sure if that's the U.S. way. So I just realized I didn't know the answer to this question when you brought up, I think you said shooting range. Our gun, can you own a gun and hold it and stick it on your belt and walk around Australia like the United States? I think you can in most states.
No, you can't. When I grew up, it was common on a farm to have a gun, not in the city to have a gun.
Legal.
It was yes, legal.
You didn't have to shoot like salt or something. You could put bullets.
No, real. So let's see. I would have had a gun, a rifle, about 11 years old,
All right.
and I used to make some money by shooting foxes for the pelts, and they're a nuisance because they kill the sheep. And so it gave me a respect of guns, and particularly when I went out with someone who we would go at night and we'd go spotlighting and we'd see the fox.
11 years old.
We wouldn't have the guns would not be loaded at all. We would only stop the car and load. And so he instilled in me a great respect.
This friend?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Your shooting coach.
Yes. But from that, what happened in Australia, we had the Port Arthur massacre in Tasmania.
I don't remember that even being a thing. Port Arthur massacre.
So there was a number of people killed. I can't remember what. But after that...
70s, 80s?
Yes. Yeah, back in the 70s or so.
Okay.
And the government said, right, that's it.
Yeah.
We've had mass shooting. That's it. Everyone hand in their guns, except if you're illegal. So on a farm it is easier. There are reasons to have a gun on a farm, but aside from that, it was hugely successful in terms of people handing in their guns, and now they haven't had mass shooting since.
Except that one in New Zealand, which
yes, in New Zealand, but this is one thing that. I lived in the US for 5.5 years in 2 stints, so I got exposed to the gun culture in the US.
Where were you, just to give us a...
just out of New York in New Jersey.
So that's a different gun culture than Nevada or California or Texas, but still a gun culture.
But working on the agricultural side,
right,
for example, the company that I later worked for in Australia, they ended up setting up in the US, and the top salesperson was called, got the Top Gun Award, and the prize for being the top salesman was a gun. You got to choose a shotgun or a rifle.
I'm not going to ask what company was it, a Winchester company or something like that?
No, this is an animal feed company making animal feeds.
Top Gun. Was it an active gun, like it could put bullets in it, or was it just...
sure. Okay. A bit, because you know how proud
of course
the Americans are of their collections.
First Amendment, Second Amendment, whatever it is. All right, here.
Yes.
Frank, you guys got guns in the Philippines? Can you own a gun there? Rath, can you own a gun here? No? All right, so
yes,
we're outsiders.
So if anyone wants to take me on in terms of, I'll back out of many arguments, but when it gets onto gun control, I will take people on in that, because I think it's the US is just out of control. How you can get so many mass shootings and allow assault weapons. The freedom of owning a gun originated when way back when you had, after you fired a shot, you had to reload. And
it was cavemen. So it was actually a slingshot, right? That's when America found
No. What do you call the powder? Yes, you had to reload the powder and the things. So there's no chance of mass shooting in those days. But now you can fire off many rounds, per second. And so if you think that it's possible, how are weapons allowed that can kill 60 people in a short period of time?
Yeah, I mean I'm not equipped.
And going back, to my origins in terms of actually, if people are keen on hunting or shooting, so not into that now. But if you do, again, I'll go back to my original thing. The whole idea is one shot, and you do the job in one shot, which is, you know, humane to the animal, not blasting away. You don't need an assault weapon to sort of rip its head off. So
I don't know. I mean, I guess I have dedicated zero energy to this, even when I was in the United States, and I was there for a long time. So I'm sure it's a great argument, and I'm sure there are two sides to this, and I'm sure we're not going to solve it here today. But it's interesting that at an 11-year-old age, you have the ground rules set. You pull the car over, no shooting out the window. You know, if I were 11 with my oldest buddy, I'm sure we'd get the sunroof open and the lights. So you're doing that for money. And so you're making some extra money hunting and getting, foxes, right? They're so pretty. How can you shoot a fox? But you're getting fox pelts and you're selling them to the local market or somewhere, and then they resell it for lining of a hat.
Back then, yes. I think it was about $35.
Wow.
Back in those days, that was quite a bit as
double minimum wage now.
Yes. No, but also when you live on a farm and when you see lambs, you know, dead in the morning and the foxes have just bitten their tongue, they just take the tongue and that's all. Or, you know, they're waiting for the ewe to give birth.
Yeah.
You have a bit of a different attitude. Yes, they're a beautiful animal, but you're trying to protect your stock as well.
Yeah, understood. I didn't mean to be insensitive to your plight as a farmer or as a transferred city boy farmer trying to save the livestock. I imagine there's a whole different appreciation for those creatures because they seem awfully fast and wily, even from television.
Well, they're very, very cunning. Very cunning. And then, I mean, another thing as well. Now you mention it, there's another way of shooting the foxes. You sit in a sit in a trap, and you have a whistle, a fox whistle. And
what's a fox whistle sound like, Frank?
It's
your first try. Fox whistle. What does it sound like?
I have no idea.
Wrath. Fox whistle.
There's a song called "What Does the Fox Say?"
What does? Okay, no, we're not coming up.
It's supposed to represent like the screams of a rabbit if it gets caught in a trap. And so the fox hears this because you make the sound like,
help me.
Yes. So and you entice the fox towards you. But,
false kill. There's killing going on over here, fox. Come over. Okay, yes. I'm with you on that. So you're 11 and you're learning the craft, and so are you sort of incidental to or when you came in today, because it was a typical Bangkok day of 100 degrees and you came in sweating and you said, can we sit for a second? Or I said that. Your dad is not in the fox killing profession when you're in Sydney. In fact, to the contrary, he's an ink and mechanics man, and he's printing and he's doing a trade, a profession that's not manual, but it's commercial, but with heavy equipment and inks and rapid moving parts and stylistically important things, right? So how does that happen? Are you moving to the country to go away from that prior profession of his?
Yes, they moved to get a change of lifestyle. We had a good lifestyle. It was, you know, in a good part of Sydney on the northern beaches, secure, and they decided to move 600 kilometres west, you know, into what was a new irrigation area. And
so by your description, 600 miles doesn't even move you a quarter of the way through the property, right? So it's just a blip, but it's far, far away. So you're not seeing your friends anymore pretty much after that.
Yes, yeah, that's right. That's right. So, and I remember landing out there, and you know, this had not been cleared or anything. We bought it as virgin land.
Yikes.
And we had to clear it. We had to develop it, and we set up a peach orchard, 2,000 peach trees, and we had cattle and sheep, and we were growing lucerne or alfalfa for forage for racehorses, premium forage, and every morning, before going to school, I would, hand milk a cow.
Nice.
And so when we moved from a very comfortable
City
location
life,
in a city life to out to the bush, as we call it in Australia, to move into a tin shed at the time, because there was no house on there. It took us maybe close to a year, to get a house built and so on. So we were living in a shed with a kerosene refrigerator.
I just watched a Kate Winslet movie where it was like this. A sort of, is the earth red, or is it that darker color? Or was this a sort of more forgiving?
In the area that we're in, we had some black soils and some red soils, and then where the orchard was more like a bit of a sandy area.
Wow.
So in the wintertime with the rain, with the clay soils, it was tricky driving, which was later on good practice for when I got into the snow.
Yeah.
And you learn skills of driving there that are handy in the snow later on.
Yeah, a ton of fun, right? Doing the rear end, because it was rear wheel drive cars, and you could get those fishtailing and swerving around with your friends out in the muck and the mud, and fairly effortless, right? Yeah. Well,
so what I remember most is just getting out there and the liberation, because the property next to us was 50,000 acres.
Jeez.
So you could just get out on that, originally had bikes, but at a young age then I had a motorbike, and you could just get out and ride for miles and miles, and all you're going to see is sheep and kangaroos.
Yeah. How long was it to school? How far were you from your school? Miles and miles?
No, not too bad. The school was, let's see, round about maybe 15 kilometres away or something.
Huh. And so did they have that sort of exception to the driving rule that if you could drive yourself in on a motorcycle or a car at a younger age, 14 or 12?
No, there'd be a school bus that picked you up.
Okay.
But I started driving cars, tractors, trucks at the age of 9.
Right.
Yeah.
Standard fare, right? I had dealt with some litigation in another life in Nebraska, and the kid had he's 13 and had a license that said he was 14 and was driving a car at 110 miles an hour. I thought, okay. Yeah, it seems like a good skill set. So let's back up to the tin hut. So does Dad break this to you on the spot, or does he say, hey, kids, at the Sydney McDonald's, we're going somewhere where there's not going to be none of this?
Yes, I remember it was back when we were in Sydney, and then, yes, my parents sat myself and my sister down, and
you remember that
explained
actual discussion right now as we sit here?
Yeah, and I remember talking about the move, and there was a little bit of trepidation, but probably more excitement with something new. And despite the hardship of getting there and missing a number of things and not having a number of things, I think it was just extremely valuable in terms of setting you up for life, in terms of recognizing and appreciating things in life. And now, of course, here in Thailand, and previously I worked in India, when you go out to the rural areas, that there's a link there, and so I don't recommend to people to live in that, but it's good to have come through that sort of experience.
Yeah, and I'm sorry if that brought up something. I didn't. Did I notice you were getting maybe a little weepy there, or no?
Yes, because
okay. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to do that.
That sort of sets up. No, if I had not have moved to the country, I wouldn't have been in this career.
Right.
Yes,
I mean, it's such a stunning thing. As I'm looking at a photo you're going to show us later, I mean, this is coming full circle, sort of very hard, or maybe going circular again. But I want to stay on this for a little bit. So you're 11. You're sitting down in a room with your parents, and they're saying, great adventure. And you're like, all in, Dad, let's do this. Or Mom, or I'm sure they were both a boss in the family. Sisters, brothers?
One sister, yeah,
That's
3
good.
years younger.
And so how old were you when you sat on the couch and got the lecture that we're leaving? Were you at the
this
lower
was,
end?
Yes. No. So I was 9 when we moved there, and so my sister would have been 6.
Wow. So you're a big brother. So you had to go out and protect her from foxes and things on the 52,000 acre neighbor's lot that you'd climb the fence to go onto.
But a farm is a great family
Yeah, I imagine.
location. Yes, because you're doing things together. So, many sons would like to have the time that I was able to have with my father and my mother. They're doing things on the farm.
Yeah. So were you more of a hammer and nail farmer dude, or were you seeds in the ground, or was it a mix of both? Because you're milking the cow. You're milking Bessie in the morning before school, so that's a more symbolic family get up early and work the farm thing.
And my mother milked another one. So
right.
yeah,
You'd sit and chat.
Yes.
Bessie, slow today. How's Trudy? Or do you remember the names of the cows? Cow names.
Yes. The one was named Prue.
Prue.
Yeah.
Was that short for Prudence?
Yes.
Is that for the Beatles song, Dear Prudence? Or your parents
I'm
were
not sure
hippies.
I'm not sure where that came from.
Aunt Prue.
But, yes. Yeah, no, all the animals had names.
I would think they're
had,
practically family, right?
Some are, yes.
Right.
Because, for example, I said we had cattle and sheep. So we had a couple of sheep that we had picked up. I don't know whether you're aware of droving in Australia. Droving, where someone moves cattle or sheep, and they graze along the road. But it's a profession that you stay on the road and you sort of live in a caravan and you push the sheep, you move the sheep or the cattle.
So would you be a drover? Would you say, hey, Chris?
No. I wouldn't be. But what happened was...
I mean, was that the name, the name you'd be called, like a rancher or a herder?
A drover is someone who moves cattle from one part to another.
And is that still an active profession of drovers? Yeah.
Yes, yeah. And so there were 2 lambs. They were just born by the side of the road, left because this mob was moving. So we took them home and we reared them up, and they were called Bindi and Burr.
You have to name those, right? Because that's family members there.
That's right. But at the time, we didn't have any other sheep.
Yeah.
So they were just in with the cattle. And then later on when we got sheep, they didn't want to associate with the sheep. They thought they were cattle, and or they associated better with the cattle. But
that's sort of that ridiculous Tarzan premise, right? Is the man raised with apes prefers apes, or whatever bigoted thing that is. But I mean, true enough, right? You got 2 sheeps that are comfortable with the cows or lambs, and
it was quite useful as well because Australian farms have cattle dogs or sheep dogs, but actually, we could almost do without them, because if we wanted to bring the sheep in, we'd just call Bindi and Burr in, and they would come in, and all the rest of the sheep would follow.
So you were that freaky family that had the 2 sheepdogs. Hey, this new guy Chris, he's missing picking up roadkill sheep and training them to herd the cattle. So you're coming up with, you're making up the rules as you go along, right? There's not 20 generations of farmers saying you got to get, the sheepdog and, no throwing Frisbees to it. You got to keep it disciplined, right? Well, so that's cool. So, I mean, you're learning on the fly and your dad's all on, let's do this, right? We got to come up with solutions. So how long to build the house? 2 years? 3 years?
No, it was about a year, I think, from memory. And so we had to live for a while, as I said, in the shed until it was built.
All 4 of you in the shed. And did you make the shed, or was it there? Was that...
No, everything had to be made, yeah.
Wow. So were you sleeping under the stars for the first month or something, or? No,
actually, before we moved there, my father built the shed before
He did it.
We did the move, but yes, you had to sleep with mosquito nets in a bed, but with mosquito nets.
And flies, I imagine, are bothersome there, right?
Yes.
Yeah,
I remember the builder, one of the builders, because Australia's got so many flies. I don't know why, but
what is that?
But it's just, and they'd be trying to hammer away, and it's a dry environment out there, and these flies would get in the eyes, and it's like, these bloody flies.
Yeah, hovering on their face. I remember, maybe I'm making this up, but I remember actively surfing with flies around me. I was like, how can this possibly be? Saltwater, they can't like that, right? Like, what the heck? But anyway, so we love Australia. We're not denigrating its fly population. It's an important part of the culture, I'm sure. So you're 11, going on 40, carrying a gun, making some extra dough, planting crops. You have an orchard, at least a peach orchard, you said?
Yes.
Was that your primary thing, or you said the alfalfa, which you called Lennox?
That was the primary, but of course, it's a tree crop, so it takes a few years to come into production.
Right.
If you take any orchard type crop or grapes or vineyards or something like that, it's generally about 7 years before you break even. So that was the reason for having a bit of a mixed farm with the lucerne or alfalfa and
lucerne. Lucerne. I've never heard that word, I don't think, before today. So is that
it just really Australia? I think almost everywhere else outside they call it alfalfa.
Okay, so it's like Vegemite probably has another product in the rest of the world, but we don't call it Vegemite. So, all right, so lucerne. And do you know what you're doing? I mean, are you like, Dad, what am I doing here? Just put it in a row, plant it, water it, not water it?
Yeah, you learn. I think there were services. The government provides some, and agronomists and some assistance there. So it's about learning. But I think also maybe when I look at Thailand on the rural side and I say, what is the biggest challenge that they have? It's they think that we've had this is how we've done it for generations.
Yeah.
This is how we have to do it. Well, actually, it's the reverse in farming. If you're a good Australian farmer, if you do the same as how your father did and your grandfather, you'll go broke.
Right.
You have to keep innovating. You have to keep improving.
So I'm assuming what you're getting at is that if you use your soil to grow rice every year, the soil has trouble sustaining the same crop over time. Some theory like that.
Yes, that's part of it. So you can't. They have a tremendous resource here, and they have good rainfall compared to other countries, but they're not replenishing the real key, the major asset, which is the soil.
Yeah. Well, let's come back to that because I mean it's interesting to see, like, were the agronomists or the folks that came in to visit Dad, were they treating you as, hey, this kid needs to hear this because I know he's helping Dad with this, and so Chris Jr., here's what you do with the alfalfa, here's how you grow it. And were you onboarding this information, or were you just sort of a byproduct to Dad?
Yes, I wasn't getting it directly, but it would it would come down from your father. Say, for example, to produce a quality product, to do the alfalfa properly, you would cut it one day, and then you'd have to windrow it the next day. But you had a narrow window when there's not too much dew and before it dries out. And the same when you come in to bale it. So somewhere between 5 a.m. in the morning and 7 a.m. in the morning is the optimal time to do it. If you do it before that, you'll get dew on there, it'll go mouldy. If you do it after that, it will shatter the leaf and you lose the nutrient value. So there's an orientation towards what is the getting the forage quality and the preservation time there. And again, as I look on agriculture, I don't think enough farmers look at it and say, where am I actually making my money?
Yeah.
What is it? Is it yield? Is it something else in terms of the quality? Is it the protein content? Is it what is it that people are paying for? So they need to work that out.
Yeah. Yeah, I would imagine sort of instinctively it's I remember this phrase, the right barrels, not the most barrels in the oil and gas industry. It's like, okay, and if it costs $100 a barrel to get it out of the ground, you're sort of got the wrong barrels, I guess, is to attack that statement or to clarify what I'm getting at. So the right alfalfa, or like the right way, right? Get your alfalfa, and maybe the wrong alfalfa the right way is not good, and the right alfalfa the wrong way is not good, and maybe barley substitutes. That's interesting. So it seems like you're going to hit your sweet spot right when you're getting ready to go, right? So you're going to have 5, 6, 7 good years of backbreaking experience on the farm, and then you're going to say, oh, by the way, Dad, I'm going to college. And he's going to say, of course you are. That was the plan, right? Or, we knew this day was coming. So the farm is now down 25% of its manpower. And your younger sister has to pick it up for 3 years. So did you go off to college, or did you stay on the farm, or how did you manage that?
No, well, really, I was off the farm from a fairly young age because at 11 I went to an agricultural school. It was an all-boys, all-boarding school. And on that farm, on the school, they had a poultry operation. They had a piggery. They had a dairy. They had a beef and sheep cattle stud, a vegetable garden, etc. And the school produced produce for the school, and basically the students did it. So you've got a very practical background.
At 11 years old?
Yes.
So it's like a boarding school, but it's an agricultural boarding school. And
yes.
you live there?
Yes, you live there. You were allowed to go home one time per month. Luckily, it wasn't that. I think it was about 60 kilometres away from the farm, so my parents could come, and they were very good. When there was any sporting events, they'd be there, and my mother would call in once a week to drop off some food and supplies and things like that. So I was one of the lucky guys, really.
Right. I'm sure there were guys coming from 1,000 kilometers away, and they were still in the same state or something, right? That's interesting.
And then, some of those people, I'd take home on the weekends that you could take, so that they got a bit of time out of school. Yeah. But again, the school was a good grounding. I guess it's a little bit like the military in a way. Boys boarding school knock you into shape.
Right.
But then after that, I went to Sydney University to do a agricultural science degree.
And that was your degree, agricultural science. Interesting. I mean, I wonder, it's funny, Bindi and Prue are teaching you quite a bit of information, and then you go to a school that has a proxy chicken coop, and you're like, well, teacher, it's a little different for me because I had to chase these things down in the morning. A little different when you got them locked away over here. Were you feeling righteous? Like, all right, I'm 11. I know how this works. What are you going to teach me? Or was it like the great eye-opening world of education?
No, it was good because this just wasn't a small chicken coop. It was a proper operation, and once a week you would be involved with slaughtering the birds, and in the milking, at the junior end, you're involved in bringing in the cows, and then as you get to middle school, you're actually milking, and then in your senior years, you're actually running the dairy. You're managing everyone, so it's setting you up both for practically, which means now when I go out to the field, I'm very confident practically about the agricultural side, but also teaches about managing people as well, how to get the best out of them as well.
Well, and it's funny because there has to be an age appropriateness. You don't go straight to the slaughterhouse as a 9-year-old. It's like we're going to save that for maybe when he's 15 or 16 before he starts eyeballing that. But I imagine that's it's a much more sort of hands-on training than you know where your food comes from. Right? Like, okay. Yeah, you don't just show up at the Sydney Villa Market and say, I need the veal.
Yeah, I think there's probably a fair share of kids these days that milk comes out of a carton.
Yeah, right, of course. Right. Saw one on TV. So I have no similar such development in my past. But so we jump ahead through an Aggie education back in Sydney, back to the city, sleeping in a dorm room and all that stuff. And then we jump ahead to this evolve concept and business structure, which you have, which has a wheel, sort of the Dharma wheel of 8 things on it. I'm not making fun of it, but I'm trying to see it circular, so it's maybe earth shape or something. But you're now working with all these things that your father took this wild gamble on. It stuck with you, and not only that, you've turned it into a livelihood. And it's, if I had to, our original discussion was around a sustainability concept. So if I were to look at this and you can explain it to us, Chris King part 1 for today is this lifetime evolution into a business owner and an advisor and a consultant for what? What is Evolve's premise here? What is the business model or premise that you sort of have? And it just seems like if you could pick anything next other than crypto, the next greatest thing would be this, right? So it seems like your ticket has come up. Your lotto ticket is now here. So preach about sustainability. What's it all about?
Yes, well, I was lucky in that my career after university took me into a technical area. I was working on the crop side, and I was doing trials, testing out products and concepts all around Australia. And then I went from Australia to the US and traveling out of the US into Asia and then into Latin America. And then I was 3 years in Brazil.
So maybe help us understand products. Alfalfa? Or
no, in this case, I started off working for a US-based company, a big major company in those days, and it was working mainly with agricultural chemicals. And so in a way, I've come a bit of the full circle, because yes, I was working with agricultural chemicals. We saw what they could do in terms of controlling pests or diseases or weeds or whatever. Now we've come further, and so we've seen some of the repercussions of that.
Yeah, of course.
So it's how you can replace some of those things with better alternatives, I guess. But what the years of work up to this stage and traveling around the world, and as I said, it was in Brazil, was in India for 6.5 years, and then here, I got an exposure across the animal side and the crop side, which is unusual, because on the animal side, people normally, they'll go monogastric, pigs or poultry, or they will go ruminant, which is cattle and sheep.
Wait, so monogastric and ruminant.
One stomach.
Okay, right. I never even thought of that.
So we've got one stomach.
Right.
The difference with cattle is they have four stomachs. So the first one really is just a fermentation vat. So the thinking is just completely different, because with a pig or the poultry, you're directly feeding the animal what's going in, and it's like what you're eating, you are breaking that down and you're utilizing that directly. Whereas for cattle, they have four stomachs, and the first one is just a fermentation vat with a whole lot of microorganisms, mainly bacteria, and it's those bacteria that are breaking down the the grasses in particular. We can't utilize grass, but the cattle can because of that bacteria. So
You mean humans can't eat grass efficiently, or it just passes through?
yes.
Okay, so
yes.
cows can get an extra boost because they got some other equipment.
That's right. So
And you called it ruminant?
ruminant, yes,
Ruminant.
because it comes from rumen, the organ. So the rumen might be it's the biggest organ. It might be 80 liters or so in size. But yes, you've got this fermentation vat, and those bacteria multiply, and they produce microbial protein. So microbial protein is just the ideal balance of amino acids. So protein really, when you consider protein, it's not really just protein. It's all the amino acids. So if you are missing some essential amino acids, you're not getting the full value. But this bacteria produce microbial protein, which is very well balanced, very similar in like the composition to milk or meat. So yes, this bacteria are doing the work to produce this microbial protein, breaking down the grasses. So this is an interesting thing when we get into the discussion about whether people should go vegan or not eat meat, in that generally people target the feedlots in the US as sort of examples of being inefficient and using corn and soybeans that could go to humans. But
So you have a bunch of cows and you're feeding them with soybean or something else that you say sort of doesn't acknowledge their body.
No. What the majority of cattle globally are, if you think where the major cattle populations are.
Well, let me guess here. So there's Midwest does a good job.
Yes,
Argentina,
Canada, Argentina, Brazil, Australia. Out in the lands where you can't really utilize it for anything else. It's
right. But unlike over in Asia, where except for like the Gobi Desert, pretty much everything gets utilized. So not a lot of grazing space in my mind.
But if you have a look at a lot of what they're consuming raw materials which are in general waste products. So say here, for example, cattle, other than eating by the side of the road, they're eating rice straw and turning that back, much better than burning the stubble. They're eating corn cobs, and they're eating a fair amount of waste material, pineapple waste, things like that. And
do they care? Would they rather have some nice, awesome grass that you're talking about? Is there like in the back of their mind, did Prue say, God, you guys keep giving me the pineapple. Well, it's sweet, but it's killing my figure.
I guess there is a preference, but interestingly, cattle are different to us in that they like the same thing. They like consistency.
Sort of like me.
Is that right? You go to the same restaurant? Okay. But it's not like, yes, we'll eat Chinese today and French tomorrow,
right.
Or whatever. They like the same thing, and also, so part of it is palatability, part of it is mouthfeel. And then the other thing is that it has to be balanced when it comes into the rumen. If you just feed straw, there's not enough protein in there to feed the bacteria. So that's where the balance comes into the diet.
So does that stuff in the stomach that you're talking about, the microbial protein, does that exist outside of the cow as something that we benefit from? Like, is it in the meat? Is my fillet, if that comes from a cow, I don't know if it does, that you're talking about, does it have microbial proteins in it that are good for me? Or is it more
not microbial protein as such, but it has one of the arguments for beef is it has some things in there which are difficult to get in the
iron.
In iron, as an example, in just in a base diet. So I think it's good these days that they're questioning how things are done,
Right.
and they're questioning the welfare. It's just that I get upset sometimes that a lot of the arguments are not factual. They're not.
Right.
They're not.
Yeah.
They're blowing out figures and they're not taking into consideration if everyone went vegan tomorrow, where are they going to produce the soybeans or the corn or,
Right.
or whatever there? So there are many reasons to eat or not eat.
Yeah.
So my task over all the years, as I say, coming back to sustainability, is how do we produce efficiently for the growing population in a way that's healthy and satisfies the current concerns. So the consumers these days are much more aware and much more concerned about where things come from and how they've been raised.
So you said that was the 12 o'clock logo on your circle of 8 logos in
Yes.
this circle. So the consumer, you said, is the main protagonist of
So
this story, right?
Yeah, so for me, it's driven by the consumer because today's consumer wants clean, green.
Right. So I'm driving, come on, Chris, this isn't clean enough. And you're saying, okay, all right. So that's my first demand, clean and cheap.
Yeah. So, but they don't. So some people will pay for
Right.
for the quality, but if you say, let's set the bar that we are trying to produce at a normal price, and one challenge I have with so-called organic is organic typically might have a 80% premium or whatever. Why is it not possible to produce, good food that is free of pesticide residues or antibiotics or whatever for a similar price?
Right. So that's my definition of organic is there's no junk on it, Chris. I need organic and I need it cheap. And so organic to me is your photo that you're going to show me, right? I'm not seeing any poison spit and put on this stuff, and it's going to not be injected with something to keep it overnight in some freezer in the food locker, and it's going to show up and it's going to be just with awesome clean water, and there's no human stuff on it, and I'm just eating. That's organic. And you're saying the markup for organic is sort of, to get to the Villa market somehow doesn't magically cost 80% more. It's just more expensive. So
yes, it's not easy to produce fully organic, and maybe that's part of the problem as well, because consumers have a mistrust of the organic label, because to be truly organic, then they haven't applied any chemical fertilizers.
Right.
They haven't used any drugs, and drugs might be required for if they get sick,
Right.
as an example. So.
Well, let me follow up then, because if you ask me, I go to this market here by our house here. We're both in the same neighborhood right now. Klongtoy Market. It's what they call fresh market, right? So you see stuff coming in from boats, and it's produce from farms that are nearby, right? Maybe someone took it on the water, maybe someone took it on a motorcycle or a car or big truck, whatever. But my suspicion in here is, if you asked me, is most of the folks that I'm looking at that are putting their stuff on their stand are presumptively organic farmers. Am I wrong? They're not. Is pesticide a luxury? Like, I'm not carrying that big thing of poison around. I mean, it's heavy, and I'll grow it, and I'll shoo the bugs away, and have the scarecrow or something. Is there a preponderance in the world that everyone's doing it?
No, I think markets are different in different places.
Okay,
if you take a farmer's market in the US or a farmer's market in Australia, you generally are talking one-to-one with the actual grower.
Right.
So you get a direct communication or assurance about how they're producing it.
I didn't use pesticides, Chris. Okay, that's your bond. Your organic is your bond if you say it.
Whereas here, the market here is the main channel to get produce out. So that produce, in some cases, might be organic. Say, for example, the bananas. I would assume that many bananas they're not doing a lot of treatments for, but it's difficult to know how the how the produce has been treated or what's gone into it. There's no traceability in it. Whereas if you go into a supermarket and you're buying a brand, that brand has a responsibility later on. If it's discovered that something is
right.
But how do you trace that back here? So yes, I shop at Klong Toi Market, but I tend to do that with the fruit and vegetables and not the meat.
Right. I mean, I guess this begs the bigger question, and it maybe goes back to our first discussion on gun control, is who's controlling this discussion? And is the tuna really not killing dolphins? It's just, who knows? I guess you have to have your conspiracy theory antennas up or not to your satisfaction, but I would think the labeling of things is becoming more and more important, and the verifiability of the labeling starts to become important. Is that on the wheel of trust here you have, or is that?
So I think people like myself can assist the farmer or the industry.
So Evolve, in your role as an advisor for Evolve, can come in and say,
yes. So I'm working with some international companies and some people here locally, and then some things just on my own.
Right.
And so my task is to try and select technology or products that fit within this holistic approach that I talk about. So on one hand, I've got the consumer up there, and then I have grain and forage and resources and feed production and breeding companies and the actual farming, and then the waste materials, and then the processing. So if you consider if it's
so you just read those in order around the dial there, right? Yes,
in that the first step is the grain or the forage. So we may be eating that directly or indirectly in terms of we're eating vegetables or fruits or whatever, or we're eating bread or rice. So the inputs that have gone into that and how it's treated need to be considered. And then as you go along, if it's animal production, then you have the breeding companies or the people producing the feed for the animals, and then key consideration is the waste products, the manure, the processing industry, what's coming out of that. So if you take as an example one company that I do work for out of Ireland as an example, two of the most important minerals that we have is calcium and magnesium. So they harvest a calcified seaweed off the coast of Iceland.
Oh, I see. So the Irish company's two big products are calcium and...
Well, it's in the same...
Yeah, okay.
It's delivered to the same. So so here they have something which is...
seaweed.
This is originally a live plant, and it accumulates the minerals in the ocean. It then dies, and then they GPS map it. They vacuum up this material.
All right.
They bring it to Iceland, and they utilize geothermal energy to dry it, and then they take it to Iceland and they process it. And they replant. They do a replanting as well. So this is not
just exploiting.
Just exploiting. This is a continual process. So for me, that fits under the sustainable.
Right, of course.
It is natural.
Yeah.
It's tested that you don't have heavy metals in it, and it's a very bioavailable source of calcium, as an example.
Wow, I have so many questions just about, like, I mean, even the interesting question about, like, identifying it from GPS, like you see this mass. But so you're you inject this at several levels into the circle. So even though we're talking about the farming production and part of that, you're talking about the water has to be clean on the go in that particular harvesting spot from your GPS up front, or you're missing element number one, right? Which is you got to pick the right seaweed. You can't get the nasty stuff that's sitting right outside of the port of Liverpool, or I'm sorry, that's not in Ireland, so I apologize. Or
no, but no, exactly,
right,
spot on.
Right. So okay, yeah. So you got me there. So that you've already have me stumbling on my own 8 criterion, but that's I think that's a great example if you're describing it to someone who's an idiot like me that's trying to figure out what to talk about here. That's appealing to me. And so then it's packaged and sent somewhere, I would assume.
Yes.
And now you're going to tell me cows eat it because it's high in calcium, and that goes into the microbiotic protein better than the pineapple somehow.
So yes, if you look across different species, for the cattle, the calcium is very important because milk can only be made if there's calcium there.
Right.
And for the bone structure, and magnesium is very important as well. And then on the pig and poultry side, again, the calcium is required for the bones, for eggshell formation, etc. So being bioavailable, but you also you then have some interesting things in terms of what happens inside the body itself.
Right.
Because in the cattle, you're in that rumen, you're wanting to maintain the pH there and an ideal band above 5.8, and you don't want it to drop. So if you feed too much grain, as an example, you will get production of lactic acid, and the rumen will fall, and then these bacteria will collapse, and they'll have a health issue. So you have to try and maintain the stability, and this helps maintain the stability. Then when you get to the pigs and poultry, you have a different scenario in that you actually want a lower pH in the gut that's favourable for the good bacteria, not for the bad bacteria like E. coli, Salmonella, etc.
Interesting.
And because in an acidic environment, when it hits the stomach, this dissolves or solubilizes rapidly, and then is not affecting the pH down the gut. Unlike, let's say, limestone, which is the principal material that's used. It's harvested as basically as a rock, and then it's a calcium source. But it can raise the pH down to the gastrointestinal tract.
You'd put crushed limestone in food?
As a calcium
I had no idea. Jeez. I mean, not a lot, right? It's not one rock per sprig of hay or whatever.
But there's something like egg production. Calcium is a major.
I guess I have
requirement.
heard this, right? For chickens or hens or whichever ones have eggs, you have like a calcium feed or a limestone feed or whatever it's called. I've seen those bags on walls in restaurants and stuff where it comes out of.
Yes.
I didn't know what the hell I was talking
I think
about.
this is, but for me, this is an example of something that fits into that. You say that here we can actually get some things which are make improvements not just in their digestion, not just in their health in terms of bone structure and longevity and stuff, but some real changes in the welfare as well, because the magnesium, for example, in pigs, it calms the sows down.
Really?
And the pigs, the sows and the pigs, they're calmer. So you have a challenge sometimes with pigs fighting against each other and tail biting, and magnesium lowers that aggression and calms them down. The calcium, we see that it helps them deliver the piglets faster, give birth faster. So as the pigs become, now the genetics are getting ahead, they're having more piglets per sow, per mother. The calcium reserves get used up, and they require the calcium for the contractions. So if you've got a more readily available form of calcium, it means it's there. Their contractions can go on. They can deliver those piglets faster. You get more live piglets and healthier for the sow.
Right. So that's the crass commercial part, is if you can inject liquid calcium into your contracting, or magnesium into your
it's just in the feed. Yes,
okay.
Just eaten in the feed.
Shoot it in and you're going to get 20 healthy baby pigs
and
if you don't.
Also used on the human side for osteoporosis.
Interesting. So how much of this, I mean, so you've been around long enough to have been in the industry when you're putting paraquat or stuff onto American fruits, and you changed that view and said, all right, we got to stop doing that. You know, when is it like, wow, I'm feeding seaweed to a cow? What am I doing? Because that has never been part of their regular diet, unless they were Northern Irish cows.
If they're living on the coast in Ireland or something.
Right, yes. It's straight into the wrong kelp bed. You know, there are 4 that could. Is there sort of genetic shenanigans here, or is the world more forgiving when you bring stuff in, and as long as it's real and it's not some?
No, the world is very questioning now. So you really have to.
But it's seaweed.
Good.
It's not KX53 made in tube 4. You know, it's not something you guys fabricated out of some plutonium.
So from that side, yes, you get a good reaction.
Oh.
You get a good reaction because it's something natural. People can they can see where it's come from, and there's you're unlikely to have any surprises. I think one of the challenges as we go into develop new drugs and things is sometimes things take a bit of time to come up. So
I mean, the vaccine's a great example. Like, okay, I'm going to get the 4th booster for what? And I'm not sure if that's good or bad or what I'm even talking about. But if you say you're giving a cow seaweed, your average consumer is going to say, I can live with that. I don't know why I can live with that, but I can live with that.
Because people are consuming this as a supplement themselves.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. And there's more of a trend towards natural supplements, towards herbal things as well. Yeah.
Right, as opposed to the protein powders that have stuff you can't pronounce. What is this? What am I taking? Thermoblaster protein? Like what? Well, this is eye-opening here, Chris. The start on the farm. Dad could have stuck with the press, and you might be a great typesetter.
Yes, I would have been in something else. I'm sure the creative side would have come out.
So
somewhere.
COP26. You're probably up on all the cliched climate stuff that fools like me read on the front page of whatever paper we still buy or read online. But methane, cows are killing us. You hear these stories and it's like, all right, come on. We're going to turn this into a cow story. It's pretty ludicrous. I think probably cement and metal should be ahead of cows. But okay, so there's a place to yell at cows because they have emissions and methane and stuff like that. But is the sustainability story in your mind something that's manageable in a 30, 40-year time period? I mean, does it save us? Is the goal of this to save us from ourselves, or is the goal for me to have a reasonably healthy diet while I'm choking on ppm that are getting through my mask?
Both things, because if you take climate control as an example, yes, that's a real thing. It's happening. At university, I did my thesis on improvement of colour in red wine, and wine regions are coming under pressure, because what used to be ideal, then it's now getting hotter, and we're seeing a shift in the best areas. So yes, what can we do? So say, for example, with methane emissions, what I would say is you start off with improving the productivity because let's say with this cow here that is not very productive,
Right,
that
I get it.
the farmer is not feeding them properly.
He's giving them the straw stuff.
He's giving them the straw stuff,
Right.
and yes, the rumen's not working
There
that
we
well, and the production is not so high. Is producing a similar amount of methane to this other cow that is much more productive. So the best way to start off with to reduce emissions per kilo of milk or per kilo of meat
Right.
is to be more efficient. The second thing is there's a lot of work going on now about additives that will reduce methane. So
food additives. So
no. Things that are fed to the cow
Right,
that will
so-
change the process in the cow of producing that methane.
Are they chemical additives then? Does this get back to the old trope? So you were replacing the healthy thing with the unhealthy thing, and it's gonna, if you give them X5Z, which is a iodine derivative, it's gonna make them less or more productive, and so now we all are eating iodine.
It ranges because yes, there's one company that is likely to release a chemical-based additive in the future.
Right.
Then if we go back to the seaweed, actually there's a lot of work done in Australia by the CSI Road there on seaweed, and there's an active ingredient in certain seaweeds, bromoform, which is reduced. So different seaweeds can assist in that process of reducing the methane. There are some other things as well that can assist in the reduction, possibly yeast materials, for example, can do it. So I think that there will be a lot of attention put on to that, and I see, especially, for example, in the Australian beef industry, they are actively promoting brands now that have taken measures to reduce carbon emissions or
Is
or
it a
methane.
label? Does it show, this is a more efficient cow label? Do you have you come up with the logo for that?
Well, they are branding it, and there is work done.
Oh.
But this is at the early stages now. There's a lot of pressure on companies to sort of conform, but I think it has to be.
Yeah.
It has to be, as they'd say here in Thailand, jing jing. It has to be,
Right.
or in Australia, feeding. But it has to be right, because, as an example, in the US, one of the burger companies came out with this country music type thing about we're feeding our cows lemongrass, and we've got the emissions or the cow farts down.
Yeah, that was right. last
You
year.
saw
Yeah.
that, and I just think that's
tricky.
it's underplaying.
Yeah.
It's underplaying the importance of this.
Well, it's a great way to frame the argument, though. That's such a good example you've given us today, because it's coming, and we got to get smarter on how we digest what you as an expert give us and fit it into Evolve. And assuming the Evolve matrix is honest, then we can follow it, right? Because this is digestible. Maybe that's a pun. I'm not sure, but I can follow this, and it's giving me things to think about. As opposed to just the standard tropes, is the market safe? Is the market not safe? Is the store safe? Is it not safe? Are Cheerios good? Are they not good? That's easy. We've been taught to do that. Everything changes.
So one of the key things that I try to do, and that gives me pleasure in life, is how can you change the productivity or profitability of farmers, especially for small farmers, because
there we go.
the larger ones they'll invite us in to give them advice, and they'll follow it, and they'll trial it and stuff. But the one at the smaller end, that is, for me, where you really get a benefit. So in India, I had the chance to work with a cooperative there, and they were producing 700,000 litres of milk a day.
So that means a bunch of people bring their cows together to a common area, and so Bill and John and Adam and Sue and Sally all put their cows in the same crew, but they know how many they had, and so together they milk.
Yeah, so India is really made up of small farmers in the main, and they're part of a cooperative, and there's a lot of women. The women are very vital or basic part of that structure. And the challenge is they're only working with a few cows, so the transfer of technology and things like that. So they tend to have low yields and
means the cow makes less milk.
Yes, okay. And so this cooperative came and said we actually need to be producing 1 million litres, not 700,000. You know, what can we do? Mm. So we looked at the...
So how do they get in touch with you? So how does a cooperative in India get in touch with Chris King to talk about a 30% increase? Well, that's not even exponentially right. That's not even statistically right. That's bigger than a 30% increase to get to 1 million, right? So it's to double their yield, as you said. Mm. So they email? Hey.
No. Because when I was working there, I was doing some meetings or lectures,
so
some yes, in terms of
education.
Educational things, and then we got close to this cooperative, and we looked at their program, and there are two ways of improving the milk yield. One is to get more milk from that cow on a daily basis, right. But also the other big challenge that a lot of small farmers have is they're not feeding them correctly, and so they have this long period between one lactation cycle and another. They don't get back into calf very easily. So the main determinants of getting back into calf is if the cow is actually in the body condition to get back.
I see. So getting into calf means so she can have a baby.
Yeah.
So part of the calculus you're looking at is better production from the cows, but also more cows letting your cows have more babies.
More days milking.
More days milking.
And not just being empty and not doing anything.
Okay.
And this becomes very important because let's say you're a farmer and you have 5 cows.
Right.
And if 4 of those are milking, or if 2 of those are only milking, that's a big difference.
Yeah.
That's double. You've doubled your milk production there.
Yeah.
So by concentrating on getting them in better conditions, but in this case improving the mineral status of those cows, over a 30-month period, the production went from 700,000 litres to 1.3 million litres. Same number of farmers, same number of cows, and only just changing a few things in their feeding regime. When I look at Thailand here and rice production, you know, the rice production is just stable or declining in terms of production per hectare. And you know, I was just looking at the latest figures yesterday, and you have 10.5 million hectares of rice being grown here, so very, very important. But the average yield is only 2.8 tonnes to the hectare. Now, when the area that I grew up in Australia was also a rice producing area in Australia.
Go figure.
And there's not a lot of rice produced, but it was producing there. And at that stage, it was 5 tonnes to the hectare. Now they are doing average 12 tonnes to the hectare. So here are the Thai farmers doing average of 2.8, and then if you look at the main crop versus the second crop, there is a difference there. The second crop 3.8 tonnes, but this is so far away from what Australia and some other places are getting in terms of 12 tonnes, or even in places in Vietnam and the Mekong, they've done some advanced programs, they're getting 8 tonnes. So for me, can we do something with Thai farmers that are at 2.8
Yeah.
tons. They're all complaining, we're not making money.
Yeah.
But I don't think they've addressed the basic issues about how to get that yield up, because obviously it can be a lot more than
Right.
2.8.
Yeah, and I'm sure there's socioeconomic reasons for it as well as physical reasons for the crop and the history of growing, but it may be that it's to double it triples their OPEX, right? So I'm sure there are other things you have to calculate, and this is not a condemnation of the Thai farmer, but it's the efficiencies to drive that yield higher may be more simple than is thought, right? It could be simple, or it could be very expensive.
So one of someone was talking to me this week and said, Chris, you're not going to change Thai farmers.
Okay.
but
and that's not your goal, right? But it's
but on the other hand, what are we on this planet for?
Right.
It's to help other people.
Sure. So that's the goal,
Yes.
is to maybe share some thoughts on this, and something that seems like an age-old process that doesn't need improvement. You're saying, hey, maybe there's some ways to ramp it up without really changing the Lana house, right? Yeah, well, interesting. I mean, that's always the dilemma, right? Good ideas in the study. It's a longer-term study, and I imagine the yield in a year, you said, from 700,000 to 1.3 million was a gratifying result, and you put that on the LinkedIn page, right? It doubled the yield in the Peshawar.
But it gives me a satisfaction, because
I'm not.
What it means is that those individual farmers would have been making more money.
Right.
Obviously, the cooperative made more money, but it goes back to those farmers. If they would have been getting almost double the production from the same number of cows.
Well, and you figure qualitatively too. You'd think a healthy, happy cow that's eating the right stuff is gonna have some good juice, right? It's just like, I can't see where this turns into like, too much and the milk is bad for you. It's like, I don't think that's how it works, right?
And I think that's where now there's a lot more concern on welfare.
Yeah.
But to me, welfare is just about good farming. It just makes sense. If an animal is in better condition,
that's
it will be happier and it will be more productive.
I just saw a to be named unnamed place having to kill 1 million pigs or something. I was like, what? We don't know what we don't know here as lay people, but good Lord, this cannot be good for you to eat this stuff. And I'm a huge fan of eating all sorts of things, but I saw that picture and I was like, what are we doing with this? This is madness. So I'm not gonna, we're getting in that touchy area. Great summary. Is there anything more about Evolve? Do you want to, you have a www.evolve.com, or is there a website, or do you do LinkedIn, or how?
Yes, there's a website, www.evolve.co.th.
co.th. So that's Thailand web, which is largely irrelevant. You'll find it if you search either, but it has some anecdotes on there and some stories and some things you can look at on that website, right? So it's introductory. So that's very cool. So I could talk a lot more about that, and I want to, and maybe we'll do that on our own, or maybe in a version 2. But I did want to talk about other things now too. So did you cover? I know I see you have notes there that were just stats, and I think that was statistical review that you wanted to write down, so you didn't get it wrong. Was there anything we missed for Evolve, or for the work that you're doing, or some product? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Cool. Good. Mm-hmm. So let's talk about photography. So Frank, we're gonna have to make this up a little bit here. Chris said that he brought either a laptop or an iPad with him, and I think he'll show it to the camera, but what we'll do is get photos we can splice in later. Or splice, that's an old term. I don't know. We put it in the machine and put them in later. So we'll have those. But connect some dots for me, because that story, I mean, holds together very well with you and Dad having the talk when you're 9 or 11. I forget the age now. And saying, guess what, Chris? You got a new life coming. I get why you're doing this. I mean, it makes sense, and it's a cool story. And I think you probably have a sense of both obligation and dedication to it that is legit, and as opposed to, as we sift through as consumer protagonists trying to figure out what to eat and not hurt ourselves, the unscrupulous provider is probably, I'm sure I have most of my products on my shelf, could take a second look at the labels and say I shouldn't be eating them. But how do you connect this other phase? Because it seems like since we've been talking, you've had trips scheduled even during COVID to foreign countries to do photo shoots or to take photos. And from your portfolio, it sounds like you have many countries covered. So it seems like you go off and do photography. Can you ground me in this? Did the Aggie School have a minor in photography, or when did you pick this up?
Yes, I picked it up in the teens. My grandfather gave me a camera. If I'm trying to think back, I think it was a Praktika or whatever. But of course, in those days, it was film.
Yeah,
yes. And so there was an interest developed on that side, and I guess my family is creative. My father painted, my auntie painted, my sister paints. My nephews draw and paint and
do you?
Use. I don't have the time for painting. I would like to. I used to draw. But photography became a way of a creative output. So in those early days, yes, it was black and white film and some color, and you had to be very selective about what you took, because you had a roll of 36 and it was going to cost you for the film, it was going to cost you to print it. But when I look back at some of those photos, there was a creativeness there that say for example, I can think of fly screen wire, this mesh, and then a safety pin, and then taking a picture of model aeroplanes and things all look so that it looks like the real thing, and also taking double images, like say for example of double images of my parents, so that they're sitting in a chair, but you do a double exposure when they're there and when they're not, so it looks as though they're a ghost.
So this is 11, 12, 13, 14, 15?
In the mid-teens, I guess. And then I guess when I started to work and travel, I got interested in landscape photography, and my job allowed you to do that, because you'd be traveling to many countries, many locations, and you could do it as you were going. You had an ideal opportunity. So one of the most expensive things for landscape photographers is actually going out, traveling, and being in the locations to start off with. So with the job, one of the benefits is you don't just go to the cities. You go right out to the outer places. So one night you might be staying in a Sheraton hotel, and the next you're in some very small town in a quite basic hotel. But it gives you the opportunity to take either landscape photos or photos of people. So over that time, I developed the landscape photography and just people out there. And it was really when COVID came along that the photography took another step forward, because when COVID happened, I said, okay, there's a lot of bad things here, but one of the most influential things in my life has been, there's a book called The Green Platform. It's done by an Irish guy, Declan Coyle. And I've had the benefit of listening to him personally and him being a friend. But he basically says people are, you've got a choice whether you're on the green platform or the red platform. And the red platform is, everything's bad. Something else is impacting me. If I had this, I would have done that, and whatever. The green platform is accepting reality and then saying, what can I do about it? So when COVID came along, it was a big hit on the business side, because my business was built around traveling quite a bit. And obviously COVID stopped that. So I said, well, what am I going to do coming out of that. So I set 3 things, but one of them was the photography. So I said I wanted to develop the portrait side, and so I got the gear for a home studio and the lighting, and I went and studied and on that side of things, and started to do more actual studio portrait stuff that I hadn't done before. In addition to that, I then developed more on the post-processing side of things with the Lightroom and Photoshop. And, there's some debate in people,
Right.
should there be post-processing or not? But
Right.
But one of the things, the eye is different to the camera in that in this room, we look around and I can see everything here pretty clearly. But if I took a photo, some things would be dark and some things would be too light. Right. So the post-processing, in a way, is a way of lifting things that are in shadow or changing the light. And then when you take photos, you also adjust for that as well, because before I would go out and take a shot, average out the thing in the sky would be a little bit blown out, and the other might be a little bit dark. Now, when you go out, you go with the concept of I need to get the sky right, and then later on I can lift what's in the shadows. I can lift that out, but. So I started doing more work there and really enjoying that side of things, the portrait side. And then, as you know, in terms of the band
music
came
videos.
along, the music videos, and they wanted portraits first, and then said, "Can you do video?" And then. Right, okay, we'll give this a go. And
do you remember me walking into you on the canal that night when you were taking pictures out there? What are the chances of that, right?
Yes.
Like, what are you doing? But very funny. So I'm trying to link this together for people listening. And I think one thing that might be unclear is we leapt from a teen life of rolls of film in your pocket to the digital life. Are you fully on the digital side of photography now? Are you all in with the laptop and the digital camera, or have you retained the old Leica in your shoebox under your bed and you use that?
No, fully digital in that. Yes, the gear can be expensive, but at least now you can take many photos, whereas before you were limited, and I can go somewhere and end up quite easily with 800 photos there of all different things. And so yes, if that was on rolls of film.
You remember that? 12, 24, 36, 4 rolls, 100 pictures was your allowance for the year.
And then and then you had to pick the film for the ISO. So if you're doing landscape stuff and it was outside, you really wanted 64 ISO.
Right, remember that?
And but yes, then if you were inside, you needed a higher ISO. 64 was not going to be good. So then you'd need a different film. But there was the excitement in terms of the development, the actual development and things. But yes, I think the versatility now and the cameras are so good these days.
I drove down Sukhumvit today, and the iPhone 13 commercial campaign seemed to be centered around super ultra close-ups of fruits and plants. And it was almost impossible to identify the stalk of broccoli they had, if you call them stalks. I'm not sure what you call a broccoli in its native state, but it was so clear and so amazing. And I thought, good Lord, that's a phone. I mean,
so now the quality of shots coming out of the phone, but I still see, for example, with portrait photography, my favorite lens is an 85mm lens, and that if you come down, to something like 1.8 or so, you can really get the separation. You can get the person sharp and the background,
Mhm.
you know, all blurred. So I think that's one side with a camera. Do
Yeah.
you want everything in the shot in focus?
Right.
And for a landscape
Yeah.
photo, you probably do. You maybe want something in the foreground to give it attention, but you
Yeah.
want the foreground and the background in focus. But for a portrait shot, many times you want people to see the subject and not get distracted by the back. So that's where the versatility, and you make your choice. Well, how much do I want razor sharp, and how much do I want blurred, and how much do I want really a lot of bokeh?
Yeah. I mean, I don't know what I'm talking about, but it does feel like the nature of the artistry has changed as we've moved into these hyper technical phones that can do stuff that were unimaginable before. So it's, like you see the moonshots people take now, you're thinking, good Lord, that's from a phone. But anyways, it's interesting. So it's interesting how you've deployed the word landscape. Because I could sit here and say a landscape is a garden in the backyard of your house, because you have the landscapers come and put in a cherry tree or whatever, and all those American tropes. But I imagine you are getting a lot of agricultural landscape stuff as well. And so I imagine there's a whole stock of like excellent job-related stuff that would be shocking or pleasant to the eye. From around the world, from Rio to New York to the Midwest of America to Asia to India to good Lord knows where. But, so the compendium of agricultural tours.
No, exactly, because a lot of my photography earlier got utilized by companies.
Right.
So, up on shots of different locations agriculturally, in different parts of the world, in head offices, or used in technical literature, product brochures. You want shots of coffee or bananas or cattle or whatever. Some calendars and things. A nice shot of cattle in Brazil and things. And I guess one of the advantages of having the agricultural experience and the photography is you can go out and take a picture of a rice field, or you can take a picture of a cow. But is it a good cow? Is it good? Because farmers know.
Yeah.
I've been in focus groups in Australia where you pass around material, and immediately they pick up if that's a good animal or not, or if the farmer looks as though he's really a farmer. Because generally an advertising agency, they say, okay, we're going to do this advertisement. Now, a typical Aussie farmer will have, an R.M. Williams shirt, and he'll have, or a country shirt, and he'll have moleskins, white moleskins, and he'll have, the riding boots, and he'll have the hat and stuff. But somehow when you do exactly that and you put it on a city guy, in the studio, farmers know that's not a farmer.
Yeah. It's like the Ronaldo jersey showing up. It's not going to sell. Well, that's interesting, and I can imagine. There's we all know when Van Halen was awesome on the guitar and was at his peak. That's probably fairly ubiquitous, and all of us knew that. But, my being able to see the sick cow probably doesn't matter in the environmental impact or the ESG manual. But when all of you guys in the industry say that looks ridiculous, not helping your cause. Right?
No, because, farmers are aspiring to have their farm looking the best, or
quality
their
beef.
animals looking. So if for example the cow is not in good condition, and there's a few ribs showing through, as an example, it's out, or the feet are not right, or if on a farm you've got a picture of a rice field and there's some weeds sticking up, or you can see that you look at the yield of that. I look at it and I say, that's going to yield well, so that'll make a good photo.
Right.
But this one here is, this is a pretty sparse. So how can you associate your product with something? So that's where I think when it comes to rural photography, I can say, I can produce photos that people would have confidence to put in their promotional stuff or whatever. So that tended to be where it was utilized first, I guess, the photography side of things.
Yeah, that's funny. I mean, then that ties back. I'm sure. The integrity of the product was instilled at the age. Sort of the school, sort of the schooling, and sort of that has extrapolated out.
So if we work towards that photo, I can
Sure.
talk a little bit about.
Sure. You want to, Frank? Could you hand that to Chris? Sorry.
That up so we can just talk about it. But
so here it comes. This is it has a big hook on it, so let's not get him hooked. Gonna hand it to him on the side there. There's Franco making his first appearance.
Yeah. So
what are we looking at here, Chris?
So this is a shot of a mother buffalo and the calf up in Isan in Ubon Ratchathani.
So that's in Thailand.
Yes, in Thailand. And the reason I like it is that the buffaloes like water, and she and the calf are in water. And then when I approach, she comes up. She's protecting the calf, and it's a nice photo of the cow and the calf. But then in the background, you have the farmer, and so for me, it's the connection between the farmer and the cow and the cow and the calf, and looking there. So it sort of brings out those that linkage with the rural. Side that I like.
Can you see that okay, Frank? Is that showing up? Yes, I mean we'll get a snapshot of this and put it in total, but I mean I'm catching your gist on the focus. So the portrait nature of this one, you could have just gone for the open shot and got the farmer in better resolution, but I think you're right. The center of this is the mother and daughter, or mother and son, or son and dad, or whoever we got here, but you know that, and you know these particular animals better than all of us do because you're capable of designating something about them. So, a thoughtful composition and very cool. And there's a story here that's, even traces back to sort of the story you gave us about the family here too. So, I mean, this is fairly symbolic of what I would think is running around your head as a high quality agricultural work. Mm-hmm. It links back to your family setup, right?
Yes, yeah.
It's just that I'm not saying your family was cows, but I think you get my drift here, right? I mean, very cool, and I liked it. I liked it upon view because I sort of liked his hat. It sort of looks like something I've seen, and then the lower line housing structure there looks like, wow, this is some intense life up here, right? Living in these wet rice fields with these animals, but very cool. Yeah, I like this one. So do you sell these? Is this something you have hanging in your house? You have it framed. Is this stuff you have available on a website?
Yeah, yes. Well, the website now I've developed, and now just trying to set up the merchandising part of it to get to that next step. But
coming soon,
yes,
is it Chris King?
So the www.king-photography.net.
King-photography.net.
Oh, yes.
Why do you choose a .net? Is that?
It was.
I don't know.
King is a common name.
I see.
They're out there. There are other King photographies and stuff. So yes, it wasn't so easy to get
right. So that was
domain.
A contrivance a little bit. Okay.
But the website is up, and I have different categories in there.
Name some of them, for example.
Okay, so you have landscape, you have urban, you have portrait photography, and that or people, and that's divided between like people traveling and then portrait type shots, and then there's another section to come, which is the fine art photography, like the more boudoir, I guess. There's macro photography for insects and flora and fauna. So those different categories,
Sure.
and then I have some of the projects that I've done. So there's the Yeti band. There's some other. I did a shoot for a yoga business in Hua Hin. So there's a few different things there, some real estate photography, and then on a country basis,
Right.
you can go to different countries, and then even within the countries, there's some interesting things. Like in Spain, many years ago, I got to be friends with one of the bullfighters in Spain. That when I met him, I was 19, but then he went up to be one of the major ones, and then got killed in the ring. So.
Wow.
There's some on my website. There's like a tribute back to him. There's a statue of him outside the Madrid bull ring,
cool.
and
Nice.
so one of my challenges, as you've already seen, is this desire to be versatile, and
Right.
people say you should channel, but you say agriculture and photography. When I was at university, I was playing rugby, but I was also doing drama as well, and people couldn't work that out. You're doing drama, and yet you're in the rugby team. How does this work? And
It's hard to be Othello with 3 jammed fingers wrapped up in white tape. It's like, wow, my fingers hurteth or something.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's interesting. So did you want to show us anything off of the laptop you had, or did you think it was better if you sent me the email and we incorporated a series of them? What's your feeling? I'm open to either.
I can show some shots there. So
all right, yeah. Why don't you just grab it? We'll cut this out,
okay.
and you can reach over and pick it up, and we'll do some light editing, fully disclosed editing. We're not going to Photoshop this. We're not going to put the Mona Lisa up and claim it's yours either. But well, that's good. So, Frank, we doing okay on batteries and stuff? Just turn it a little bit like this, if Frank can see it. So you got it looks like a temple shot here that we're going to look for later. It's Thai, maybe Cambodian. What do you got there?
Yes, just starting off, what I would put into the landscape for photography or outdoor photography. So for this year, I did a calendar shoot.
Yep.
of historical sites around Thailand and,
cool.
and Cambodia. So this is one of the shots there. I went to Pimai and Phnom Rung in Buriram, Sukhothai, Ayutthaya, and Angkor Wat. So just showing this in terms of, I think one of the things in photography, you say, well, what are some of the essentials in photography? And one of them is patience.
Right.
So it is possible to drop in an artificial sky, get a sky from somewhere. But this I sat there for maybe an hour or two waiting for the clouds to change. So I really try and get something which helps set off the photograph.
Yeah, that's the first thing that caught my eye, just looking at it from the side here, just sort of the composition of the sky behind that temple.
This is just like a coastal scene in Prachuap Khiri Khan, and just a bit of a relaxing scene with the water and then a hut on the coastline there.
There's your seaweed. Come on, you're tying it all together for us.
Yeah,
it's my calcium and my magnesium right there.
Yeah, in the main, these are just photos I've taken fairly recently. So this was over the Christmas period and down in that Prachuap Khiri Khan area, and just the stormy nature. So the weather wasn't exactly what I liked, but you're able to get the fishing boats and the thing there. This is one of the temples near a sunset here in Bangkok. Near the Golden Mount.
So certainly you've modified those colors.
No, actually, there's very little enhancement. That was the actual color of the sky that night.
Jeez.
But again, I come down to patience, because you sit there and you wait just for the right light, and you may have that light for about 2 or 3 minutes.
What's our poll here? Do we believe this story? We're going to have a veracity poll here. I believe him because I'm sitting on camera, but That is an incredible photo.
But the only manipulation is, see in the foreground here, that was a bit darker.
Ah.
So I've brought up the light in here, but the actual sky color is,
And so you're
is-
pointing in the foreground, there's a series of flowers that look like
Yes.
tulips or something.
But the actual sky, that
Purple.
is, that's how it was at the time. But you only get a window of maybe 2 minutes or less sometimes for that. This is another shot down the coast and just catching when the sun bursts through in the clouds.
So these are your classic portrait, or your classic landscape documents then, right?
This is the temple out of Pattaya.
Okay.
What's
I forget the name of it. Yeah.
Yes, but very interesting. Made all out of wood and stone. They're still working on it. This is just some monk figures on the temple, sort of out in the middle of nowhere, up on the way to Chiang Mai.
Okay, we'll try and flash these then. If you send these to us, we'll try and incorporate these. But Frank is taking some pictures now, so we'll be able to flash these up so you can see them.
This is an example of say, a landscape shot where you're getting the local culture with the spirit houses looking over, the rice fields.
So mountain range, spirit house, rice tails.
So we'll move through now. This is a bit of the flora
Yeah.
and fauna. So, a squirrel shot there, some of the cattle, tortoise, so butterfly and flowers. This is some of my still life stuff. This is that I took. This is Brazilian. They have the Brazilians drink mate, they call it, like a tea, and they put it in this gourd, and they heat the pot up and they share that around. These are
interesting.
some masks there. So some backlight in
Mardi
there.
Gras, right?
Then this is a cover dance in December, cover dance competition. This is a Chinese opera singer.
So we'll try and keep up with these when we insert them. Take a little bit, go a little slower. Maybe we can sneak them in.
Okay, this is the yoga shoot.
Okay.
Sunrise at in Hua Hin.
Nice. So Hua Hin's a town outside of Bangkok. Pattaya is a town outside of Bangkok. Most of the other ones have been further away. So the last 2 years you've traveled to get some of your photos. You've left the country too, or did you stay? Yeah.
No.
It's sort of hard for us all here to leave Thailand for the last 2 years, maybe the last 6 months.
Yeah, next week is my first trip out for a couple of years.
What'd you say, Phnom Penh?
Yes.
That's an interesting start.
Yeah. This is a model and just a shoot at a studio. This is an example of using natural light in one of the parks here. This is, again, using backlight at the blue hour there. This I just like in terms of the intensity of the
little boy and a
child
pigeon.
and the pigeon. Then just some classical work portrait type of things. And then this, for example, he's an author of a book on futurism, and he got me to do a shoot from him. And so trying to get him in his natural environment there.
2 bent screens.
This, Adam, this was a shot, like a death scene from his party tonight in Valhalla.
All right, shout out to our friend Adam. There you go, Podcast 19.
It's just skateboarding there. This is a rural farmer here, rice farmer sowing the seed, blowing out the seed. This is a girl in a temple, sort of looking out with some curiosity.
Face mask?
There, with a face mask on.
It's your COVID series. Well done.
This is a drummer
Yoshi.
shot. Yoshi, yeah.
Right, Yoshi? Yeah, that's what he said.
This is a shot of a model carapin there. And this is some fine art photography
Okay.
here. You can see trying to capture the light and the body formations there. Here, there's some yoga or poses in up against the sunset. One of the pretties in a motorbike show there here in Bangkok, and this is light painting here, where you have the camera open for a long time in virtual dark. You just paint the light, and then you take a flash later on. So
well, let's break it there. I mean, we're going to try and sneak a lot of those in, but I think I'm glad you got some of the long outside shots that sort of bring in your awareness of the environment that probably most of us don't share with you. When you walk through a field or a spot, you're probably going to do a check the box list from your schooling to assess the health or relative unhealthiness of a landscape. But at the same time, you used a word, rice shoots. It's just interesting what you see and how you see it. And so, a trained photographer with a skill set in identifying the agricultural component to landscape is a vicious tool here, because you're going to be able to pick landscape out that has meaning other than sheer beauty. It's always the trope to fall for, the side shot of the mountain that everyone has, or, the Eiffel Tower from portrait, identifying things in a landscape like the mother or, the calf. I forgot how you described that. And then with the composition with the farmers, it's interesting to hear an artist critique his own photography, but also to explain it. And those details may have been lost. So I'm looking forward to seeing more of this, but it makes me look back or think back to the pieces that I have looked at online of yours, or that I've seen. It gives it a new context with the story that you gave us today. So I think it's interesting. So part one, interview. Part two, you showed us your work. Appreciate that. I'm thinking Frank needs to cool off the equipment here a little bit. What we're going to do is pack up one or two of these cameras. We're going to jump in my car, drive across the street, and before the security people kick us down for COVID violations, we'll try and get some shots in the park. But it might be interesting. I assume you'll point out some things that I'm walking by and don't see. And so we're not going to play trick Chris King, but we're going to take a look at the Benjakitti Park and look at something that I'm sure you and I both like, but probably, now that I'm thinking about it, for some different reasons. And you're going to see stuff that maybe you'll talk to me about. So we'll try and get a little bit of footage of that. And so for people who listen to the Roman Anton podcast and want to hear something about Bangkok, we'll pass that one along. But it was great having you in today. And if I don't say that out in the park because it's too hot or we're getting chased by the cops, I'll say it here. It was a pleasure having you in. And I'm glad we got to do this. I learned a lot today. Yeah,
no, it's great.
All right, appreciate it. So Frank, let's shut this down and pack up some cameras and hit the road. All right, thanks. Roman Anton Podcast back in Benjakitti Park with our guest today, Chris King. Chris, thank you for coming out with me. We just had a technical glitch, so we're going back over some ground again. But this, to me, I thought would be a good addition for a photographer. But now that I've spoken with you, I think it ties things together well because of the evolved sustainability story of this park. I think the better minds of Bangkok said, let's get a green space. That's in your theme, right?
Some green lungs for the city.
There you go. Green platform. Needed, yes. You told me about what's the Declan, platform.
Right?
Yeah,
right. Declan Coyle.
Declan Coyle, greatest name I've heard in a long time. So I'm going to get that book because of the name. But so, what do you think about this place? I'm getting fairly attached to it. It's close. I can see my house over in the distance there. You're nearby too, right?
Yes, I'm nearby. I used to come into the other part of the park, the earlier park, on a bicycle or running before, and recently been in a couple of times as it's been constructed. I guess it's a nice connection.
Come on, guys. No, sorry to bother you. How you doing today?
Hi, I'm good.
It's hot. A little bit hot, right?
Yeah.
Good. You're looking good. See ya.
I guess it's a nice connection between the lake, which people generally circulated around and just sat around, and then Lumpini, which is got quite a bit of activity, normally exercise and things. So this has been set up like to try and attract a bit of wildlife and wetlands. So we'll they've got paths through here. That looks good. As I mentioned, I just wonder how the mosquitoes will be.
Yeah, well, I'll be looking forward to see how you take the shots of these lotus areas. I'm a big fan of that. It's obviously a theme to Thailand. The skyline has that design all over it, but it'll be interesting to see how this shoots out. But you know, I asked you earlier, you know, picking out locations, you know, scouting locations and traveling through the country and now the region. Hey, go ahead. How are you doing today?
Thank you.
Everything okay?
All good.
All right, hydrate. You know, you pick out your locations, so you travel countries, you're used to traveling for work in the past life, the current life. You got a lot of patience, right? You find the place, maybe not the shot, you find the shot, maybe not the place. But you've done a good job showing us some representations of your portfolio. So,
probably one of the hardest things actually is if you are with other people. We mentioned the patience, and normally it's waiting for the right shot. Either just the composition of the shot or the light or whatever. So if you're with other people and they're snapping away with their mobile phones, and that's fine for Facebook. But if you really want to get things right, then you have to hang around a bit and see. So that's one of the aspects. And the other thing is coming back to the same location really helps. You see some of the really great landscape stuff. People have been back on a repeated basis, and they can show it differently each time.
I think you taught me something today. I mean, I think, you know, walking in here with the photographer, and I'm destination oriented, and you stopped 20 times on the way here to take shots, I thought, hey, he's on his agenda, you're on yours. You're gonna have to meet somewhere in between. But I thought this is so funny because I'm racing for the destination and you're stopping along the way, and I thought that's probably pretty indicative of how I run my day and my business.
I'll give you an example. One time went down to Chachansao. And it wasn't my car, I was in someone else's car, and we're driving past, and the light was just right. You know, the sun was coming down, and the fields, the rice fields were just great. They had this lovely green coming out. I said, "Oh, stop!" And the driver just says, "Oh, no, we'll get going." And then he stopped up down the road.
Hey guys, sorry about this. Thanks.
So the driver passes on that, and about 5 kilometers down the road, he stops, and I said,
"Too late."
That's it. Too late. The light's gone. There's an electric line. You know, there's an electricity line going across the thing. This is a useless shot. So
Frank has learned better. Frank takes pictures all the time because I'm always in such a hurry. But Frank is the photographer for the band for sure. And his Instagram, we've probably had 1,000 meals together, Frank. I think you've captured a lot of them. But it starts with the meal and the band. So whenever I look for footage Frank, what do we got photos of that show? No. Yeah, no. So but it's interesting. Right time, right place. Wrong time, wrong place. We talk about that here. But look, it was great having you in today. I really enjoyed. I enjoyed the story about the childhood for a lot of different reasons. But it shows how destinies or how futures are formed, and it's really interesting hearing it, and I think it's important for me to hear it to sort of keep things in context when I'm racing through things. I mean, somewhere along the line you stopped and said, this matters, right? And you held on to it, and it's your discipline is obvious, and so it was great to hear from you today. It's great to hear your story, but it's also great to see how your story impacts your photography and how it's all holding together. So I hope it was worthwhile for you to come on today, but I appreciate your coming.
Yes.
So thanks for coming out to the park.
Thank you.
All right, Franco, we good?
Yes,
All right, thank you.
I hope so.
All right.
1, 2, 3, quiet.